And you were muted.
Give me 1 second. I am trapped. I almost left the meeting. I was trying to get rid of the I accept the recording business. uh,
Your screen is up. It looks good though. So
okay, good. Good. So let me shift our thinking for just a minute. Yes, my concern is almost always secondary traumatic stress for all the providers and people out there. But my focus, I really try to keep my focus on what do we do about it? We all know what's out there. We all know we're exposed to it. And it's important that we increase or manage to be as resilient as possible in order to keep doing this work that we are all committed to doing, or you wouldn't have shown up here. So, as Mike said, my name is Bobbi Beale, and I'm a clinical psychologist by training and did work out in community behavioral health for over 20 years down in Stark County. But I've been up with the Center for Innovative Practices for unbelievable 8 years now. And trauma is one of my pockets of expertise and experience. And well, let me just jump into this PowerPoint and walk you through, because what I wanted to do today is really a continuation of some of the didactics that I did in the last year. And if you're curious about those didactics, you can go to the links around ECHO and the ECHO website, and they have them all saved, and you can watch any one of them that you're interested in, or many of them. So this is really part 5, and I'm calling it the big picture because I'd like to take a peek looking back at what do we know and what have we learned so far. So first, a quick review. And this slide is from part 1, provider resilience. And as system of care providers, we spend most of our time working on how to help other people, sometimes to the detriment of our own health and well-being. So no wonder we're feeling run down, irritable, less effective sometimes. And it's time to turn that mirror onto ourselves and think about what's going on here. So the first thing is STS, or secondary traumatic stress. And you know that that's when other people share their trauma with us. Occasionally we see it firsthand, but mostly it's called secondary traumatic stress because the trauma belongs to someone else, a client, a family, a youth that you're working with. And because they're sharing the information about it with you, it impacts you and your brain. The second issue is primary traumatic stress, because it turns out that many of us have our own personal traumatic or adverse childhood experiences and current life events and stressors. So we have our own to add to the mix. And the thing I don't want to miss here is that a huge portion of people have some level of traumatic stress or childhood trauma. But in the helping fields, in the social service fields, in the system of care fields, we have a higher percentage of people who have their own trauma. Whether this is because we go into the field because we want to fix it, or we want to give back, or we don't want the thing that happened to us to happen to others. Those are all contributing factors, but we do show up with higher amounts of stress and trauma in our lives. And then finally, this slide is from a year ago, but it's still true today. We're having a workforce crisis. It is very difficult for us to fill positions and keep them full. And we do not have waves of people coming out of school saying, I want to fight for the youth and families. I want to join this. We get some, and thank goodness, but not in the amounts that we could use right now to fill the rosters for Ohio Rise and other well-intentioned programs like that. This is the neuroscience that I introduced you from Provider Resilience Part 2. And the idea that when we're exposed to a lot of ongoing stress, and so you would be exposed to a lot of ongoing stress from all of those things that I just showed you, and also your job. So now we have work stress added into that. And the more ongoing stress we experience, the more we get excess cortisol flowing through us, and that causes inflammation. And if you don't know it yet, inflammation is the root cause of all the things. All the things. Weakened immune system, cardiovascular problems, your libido, fertility issues, GI issues, depression. It's really, inflammation is corrosive to your entire biological system. Conversely, no, I'm sorry, not conversely. The other thing that I want to bring out here is stress overload. And so we can handle a lot of stress. Human beings are designed to handle a lot of stress. And when we have a lot of stress, we sort of rise to the occasion and take care of something, or turn on the juice, and really can add extra energy and attention and take care of things like that. However, when it never ends, when we feel like we're constantly in stress overload, you get a hyperactive amygdala and hippocampus area. And then you have low serotonin when that happens, which equals a loss of executive functioning. And when you think of executive functioning, it's a smart part of our brain up here, and it helps us organize and make plans and problem solve and execute things. And it's not working as well for us with that ongoing stress and inflammation due to the overwhelming amount of stress. And I don't know about you, but I have a hard time finding anyone these days who's having an easy time. We're going to talk about some really difficult case today, and that of course will take our attention. But I want to say that, let's see, we have 50 some people on the line today, and I'm going to say most of you would say, there's something not right in my life right now. I'm struggling with this, that, or the other. And that is stress overload, folks. Then in part 3, and I'm trying to model reflection right now, I shared some things I learned during the pandemic and talked about what did we learn and how was that helpful? And you can see them up there. We learned that our brains can only take so much in. We have limited bandwidth. We have a lot of data and information about resiliency, but we hadn't intentionally refocused it on the workforce. We had thought mostly about making our clients resilient and helping them get over their whatever it was that they were struggling with. We learned a lot about, and some of us for the first time, for me, it was the first time I learned about polyvagal theory and how being connected with others calms and connects us and helps with being resilient. Meditation was something that I had talked about for a long time, but hadn't really practiced myself until I was locked down and couldn't go a million places every day. And so I got myself a little meditative habit and other reflective practices, because all of the things on here, all these reflective things, increase our compassion for ourselves and for other people. Another one of the gifts that you receive from reflective practices is called metacognition, thinking about thinking, being able to see ourselves inside of larger situations clearly enough to see, how do we like ourselves? Are we aligned with our values? Are we doing what we want to do? Taking that moment to step out of the flow of life and reflect on, where am I? So, folks, I'm curious, if you reflect upon what you've learned over the last couple of years, what's on your list? What have you learned? What better habits have you picked up? How have you increased your self-care? I am strongly encouraging everybody to put at least one response into the chat. And I'm going to try my absolute best to stop talking for 1 minute. Nice work, everybody. You all feel free to keep putting things in the chat like that. It's inspiring. And that's another thing that reflection does for you. It opens you up to being inspired by others as well. Moving on, one more thing that I learned during the pandemic was that as cool as the ACE study is and was, and it made us so aware of adverse childhood experiences and their impact on our long-term health, they simply didn't include all the ways that humans experience trauma and toxic stress. And this is why we need the bigger picture. So I found a couple of creative organizations that try to expand and update our understanding. This graphic is from PACE's Connection, and you can see that underneath the standard household dysfunction, individual and household issues, is this whole root system that they relate to the larger community. And that really struck home with me. These are things that are really strongly impacting people that we're working with and communities that we live and work in. And they also have a very similar impact on us in terms of toxic stress. You can read them in there, but I just want to go over a couple of them. So it includes things that the ACE, later on, the ACE study expanded their own pyramid to include some of these things like discrimination, historical trauma, and then they summarized theirs with some sort of community statement. But all of these things impact a lot of the clients that we're working with, right? Lack of jobs, substandard wages, being in poverty, food scarcity, lack of social capital and mobility, all of those things. We can't ignore them. They're a big part of what's going on. And yet they too are not the complete picture. And here is the biggest picture that they give us. And they include really 3 levels. They call them the 3 realms of ACEs. So they have the household, the original 10. They add another 10 to 12 with the community, and then add another section about environmental things. And that really feels to me like a more comprehensive look. But I will say I have one more picture to share with you, and it's this one. This came out of a group in North Carolina, and they presented at an experiential conference that I am fond of and attend regularly. And they created this, and they did a good job because they kept the ACE theme, the ACE. And so way up here, well, in the middle is your adverse childhood experiences with the same 10 that we keep talking about. Underneath that is adverse community experiences, again, pulling up of many of those same things. And I love the picture version of the tree because it really helps you understand that these things feed into these growing problems here. However, underneath all of that, atrocious cultural experiences. And I thought that was a great capture too. Genocide, slavery, colonization, forced family separation, segregation, harmful social norms, those sorts of things. And then one more, they added a 4th layer way up at the top, adverse climate experiences. So they separated those out. My only question for them when I next see them is COVID-19 a climate experience? Is it because we breathed it? Is that the deal? I wasn't sure if that belonged up in that corner. But this is my favorite picture at the moment. And I like to have that bigger picture. I think that it helps keep me grounded and organized around the solution isn't just to erase or treat a symptom. The solution is to create more hearty, whole people and families and give them the space to live their best lives. And I like to keep that in mind. So for us, the solution remains provider resilience. If we're not aware of this bigger picture and our place in it and how we impact it, we won't be around to help with it very much. Self-care isn't a luxury or a weakness. It shouldn't be the last thing on your list. It's a requirement for our own health outcomes And it allows us then to turn around and give to this world that is struggling and needs us so very much. So in part 4, I reminded us that we actually do know what to do to address the biology of toxic stress. We got this information from one of my heroes, Nadine Burke-Harris, who's a pediatrician and wrote a great book called The Deepest Well. And in it, she tells us these are the things that we must do to combat toxic stress. But they're hard to do when you're actively overwhelmed and stressing. So at the same time, in part 4, I shared with you about trying to create atomic habits. You have to make the things that keep you upright a habit, or the minute you get stressed and overwhelmed, they slip away. And so I'm curious now, and you can answer if you want to in the chat, but those answers that you put in there, things that you do to help yourself and take care of yourself, they probably fall in one of these categories. And I'm curious, is it a habit for you? Or did you just happen to do it, or that's one thing you liked? Because I have found that my habits really do keep me upright. So this takes me to this last one. And we need to activate and expand our social engagement system. Whatever you put in that list is great. You need to tune into your own body and figure out what you need. And you can use your breath to calm down and to be present and reflective. But there is nothing better than your connections with other supportive, healthy people. It is the absolute #1 thing. Now, I will tell you that I assume safety underlies that. You have to feel safe. But the thing that helps people be most resilient, stay in the game, help others, feel okay about themselves is our connections. There's no magic vaccine or meditation or thing that you can do that is better than having real connections with real people. And there's an issue, what about virtual connections, Bob? Is this okay? Well, it is, but it's not the best. It definitely contributes. Being able to see all you folks every other week or at least once a month is helpful in knowing that we're all working on the same things and putting our energy together. That is both helpful and inspiring. But who do you connect with? Who are your people? And if you can't connect with them in the moment, you can think about them. So I have like a minute left here, and I invite you to take a deep breath, close your eyes if you want to, and imagine one of your favorite people is walking toward you. How's your body feel? Where's your mind going? Now they're smiling at you. Can you not smile? So amazingly, you stir up your polyvagal system when you imagine people. So connection, real life connection is #1, but just thinking about them can also be helpful. It is the #1 effective strategy to activate your resilience. Please connect with people who are safe, stable, and nurturing to you. And remember, you can get a calmer result. You can be calmed and calm yourself by just thinking about them. There's one last piece on this slide, and that's if you're having trouble doing that because you're so anxious that your brain is darting all over the place, try to harness that. Try to recognize it and say, I'm having those anxious thoughts. Let me just set them aside for a minute and think about my friend. Think about people who love and support me. Again, #1 thing. I'm sure I'll be back in the future to talk to you about other things. But in the meantime, be careful out there. We need you. We are so appreciative that you're here with us today. And I'll turn it back to Mike.